There are no games until Friday, so we got some time to continue to enjoy the Dodgers' path to the World Series, talk a little bit about the bullpen in the next round, and look at how many Hall of Famers are in this World Series. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. If this is your first time listener watching, welcome. My name is Vince Amperio. That's Jeff Snyder, and this is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts, and on YouTube, all you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers, and you can subscribe and make it easier on yourself to get notified when episodes are ready, or if we're going live on YouTube, like we are here on Monday night. And Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered this team in a few different ways for a decade now. We've been doing this podcast here for 6 seasons. We've been doing a Dodger podcast longer than that. And, we've seen a lot of Dodgers. We've talked a lot about the Dodgers. We've been a part, or the Dodgers have been a part of our lives for a very long time. And for the first, well, Jeff, not the same, but for the first part of my life, not only did we not get to see the Dodgers in the World Series, I didn't get to see them get a playoff win until I was 13. So now we get to talk about them, about being in their 4th World Series in the last 8 seasons. It's definitely a good time to be a Dodger fan right now.
Yeah, they were in the World Series 4 times in my first 11 years of life, and then 0 times for the next however many, 29 years, and then now 4 times in the last 8 years. So my kids are getting a better teen years experience, than I did as a Dodger fan from the time I was 11 until, like you said, until you were 14, 13. Dodgers didn't win a playoff game. And so did you see the stat today? Dave Roberts is 6th all time in postseason wins.
No, but I mean, it makes sense. There's extra rounds now, and he's gotten to the World Series 4 times in those extra rounds. So.
And the 5 guys ahead of him, I did the math. They averaged 29 years managing and over 4,000 regular season games each. And Dave Roberts is 9 years and about 1,300 games. So, he's on pace to do some things. Yeah, the extra rounds definitely help. Although most of these guys are in the wild card era. Bobby Cox, Joe Torre, Bruce Bochy, Dusty Baker, and somebody else, whoever the obvious one. Tony La Russa. So a lot of rounds there, but not a bad time to be a Dodger fan. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's one of those where there's no game till Friday. There's a lot of, time for you to continue enjoying the Dodger win before you really think ahead to what the series is and, just how big this series is and, what it means, not just for Dodgers, but, for Yankee fans, for baseball in general. Like it's kind of, misleading in the sense of it's the most common World Series matchup ever because it hasn't happened in so long, and it all happened really in less than a 20-year span for the most part. A lot of those are maybe 30-year span, but either way, that's the fact. But it's just not that common in recent times. It's kind of like Lakers Celtics, where they didn't play each other for a long time after the 80s, and then now they played each other a couple of times in the 2010s. So, but yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to ask you, having been at Game 6 last night, I didn't get to talk to you last night because you were busy standing around the locker room trying to avoid. How do your shoes smell, first of all?
Yeah, I wear the right type shoes, so they're good to go now.
They've dried out.
Yeah, I learned after last year. I messed up last year. But.
You probably don't get targeted quite as much as David Vesia does either.
not so much. Not so much here. For when you get to go in the locker room, if you're not part of like the team or MLB or like I think some of the main beat guys, by the time you get in there, most of the main like champagne and everything is done. You kind of get the secondary stuff, and basically whoever's like still going after that initial round, which from the NLDS to the NLCS was a little bit different. In the NLDS, by the time we got in there, it was a lot of the guys that maybe don't play as much or not even on the roster that were still going. This time, I didn't even get to see Shohei Ohtani in the locker room this last time for the DS. For the CS, you got to see him a lot early on, him and Yamamoto. And then you had, the same guys, Graterol, Kiermaier, Glasnow, all those types of guys getting going. But you could tell that like the first one was maybe more of a like type of cathartic win, where obviously against the Padres and everything else, and just kind of blowing off steam. This one was just like, hey, fun, and we don't have to play in 2 days. Last time they had to play 2 days later. This time they know they weren't playing till Friday. So yeah, it was it's fun because you see the players, but then you also see all the staff around the Dodgers, whether it's training staff or Dodgers PR or business operations or baseball operations. Like everyone's all kind of sitting and enjoying the moment. And for me, it does take a few extra scrubs to get all the cigar smoke out of my beard too. So
that makes sense. And then the stadium itself, I've talked to a few people who were at the game, sitting in the stands. You were all over the stadium at different times during the game. Watching on TV, it felt like it was a really good crowd. Felt to me, and I'm on record as being a little bit different than a lot of people. I don't need it to be loud the whole time. My opinion is, if every moment is the same volume, then there's no such thing as a special moment. I think there should be some moments in an elimination game or a chance to clinch game where you are so tense that you can't possibly make a sound, And so it felt to me like there was a lot of passion at the right moments, a lot of tension at the right moments, and seemed like a really, really good baseball card. Is that how it felt to you in person?
Yeah, it's been, honestly, the whole postseason has been a lot better than previous postseasons in terms of the fans. The Padres brought it out for sure in the first round. And then I think just general excitement brought it out in this round because, the Mets aren't a huge rival or anything. And, it's not like the Dodgers are making their first World Series in a while. But 2020 wasn't that long ago. 2017, 2018 weren't that long ago. But it feels so long ago just because of everything that's happened since then and everything else. And, I think the fans, yeah, they did bring it. Even the 1:00 game in game 2, I thought, there was about 45 minutes till game time, and I was like, oh man, this place is not going to be filled up, and it ended up being filled up. And this one was filled up right around game start, and got it going from the beginning. Even though going down 1-0, obviously the Dodgers brought it back in, going up 2-1 in the bottom half of the inning. But yeah, I mean, it's been a lot better crowd than I anticipated, just based on previous postseasons and kind of what you think about. I will be interested to see. I know the World Series will be intense. But with some of these prices, man, it's crazy of who's going to actually be there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because it is so expensive that, yeah, I mean, you're going to have just different people at the games. The average family, there's not going to be very many husband and wife and their 3 kids at the World Series because that's, a year's salary, to get good seats. And definitely, even to get nosebleeds, like, what family has $6,000 to drop on going to a baseball game? It's so it'll be interesting to see if the energy is different. I also wouldn't be surprised if these prices right now are asking prices, that people are trying to capitalize on the excitement and the hype, and the prices will go down as we get closer.
I don't know. The cheapest ticket from the Dodgers face value was $800 for top deck and runner reserves. So. Yeah,
but a lot of people, season ticket holders, they would have been a lot cheaper, and so there will be a lot of season ticket holders who can afford to drop down lower. And if they don't get the thousands of dollars they're asking for, they may end up getting down. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But it's I'm perfectly content to sit and watch the games on my TV on my couch with my family.
Yeah. Like I said, luckily, through the job I get to be there. It's a little bit different not being able to purely sit and enjoy and watch the game and cheer for the Dodgers. But, it's definitely cool to feel that atmosphere. And, after being in Philadelphia and even Houston and some of these other places the last few years and thinking like, man, Dodger Stadium hasn't had this really in a while. It definitely feels like Dodge Stadium brought it back this postseason, and it's been fun to watch. And obviously, I wouldn't say it fueled the team, but it definitely helps. Like the guys all mentioned that it helps, and I do think that it brings a little bit of an element, a little bit more of a home field advantage than in years past.
And getting knocked out in the first round 2 years in a row probably adds to the excitement, gets people more fired up when they do have success.
Yeah. All right. Well, there are some stuff to talk about in roster construction. Not necessarily too much on the position player side, but a little bit on the bullpen side, based on some things Dave Roberts said about guys that could come back. So we're going to talk about that next. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Well, it's MLB postseason coming to an end, and we got one of the biggest series in a long, long time, especially when it comes to Major League Baseball. But Game Time can help you get in because they're an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which means you can get your tickets faster and easier. And the prices on the Game Time app usually go down before it gets to first pitch. So they got a lot of different reasons why you should check out Game Time. One of those being the customize your spot, where you can look at the spot, check out the flash deals, the zone deals in that area. You can check out views from the seat. It's easy to find, easy to look for, easy to see what you're going to get. And they got a lot of different things like Game Time picks, which makes it easily curated for you. They got all in pricing, so you don't have to worry about the fees again added on at the end. They got the lowest price guarantee, which means you'll get 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row cheaper on another app. And they got the Game Time ticket coverage, which means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day, and make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can subscribe and become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. And you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. You get text directly from us with any updates or thoughts or vibe checks, as Jeff did in Game 6 during the game, and a lot of different things. Just a few bucks a month. So that's joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. All right, Jeff. Position player wise, unless it's going to depend on if Miguel Rojas is healthy and how Freddie Freeman's feeling of the actual construction of the roster for that. So we don't have those answers yet. We may in the next few days, but we do have some thoughts to expand on, in the sense of Dave Roberts saying Brusdar, Graterol, and Alex Vesia could both be healthy enough once we get ready for the World Series on Friday. Now, if that's the case, who comes off, or are they both guaranteed to be on? Different conversations to have, so we can get that started.
Yeah, I think if they're both healthy, I think they're both guaranteed to be on. They are definitely upgrades. Edgardo Enriquez is the obvious low-hanging fruit, first one off the roster. Great stuff, but not ready for prime time. So I guess in retrospect, maybe I was right a couple weeks ago when I admitted to being wrong about Enriquez. I'm excited for his future. I'm not excited for anything about him in 2024. And so he's the obvious one. The other choice, if both Vesia and Graterol are healthy, the other one is a little bit more interesting, because for me, it comes down to 3 or 4 guys. I feel like you could put Ben Kasparias in the category of on the bubble, but I feel like Kasparias has earned his spot and he's going to be on the roster. But he's one long relief guy. You don't need 3 long relievers. And so really, probably either Honeywell or Knack would be the other one to drop off. But then maybe the dark horse would be Ryan Brazier. If you do, knowing you're going to have a bullpen game at some point in the World Series, if you do value those long relievers, and you do want to keep the 3 of them, Brazier has been bad enough that maybe if you're not really seeing a spot where you would use him, he's a 1-inning guy who can't be trusted in a leverage situation. I still don't think that's likely. I think Brazier is safe just because of the way, because there's other guys. For me, it comes down to Honeywell or Knack, and probably Knack would be the one to be dropped off the roster in my mind, even though he's a better pitcher than Honeywell. He hasn't performed better recently, and he's a rookie. Honeywell is, more mature, more. It's not going to hurt Honeywell's career to have him go out there and give up 4 runs in 4 innings like he did on Friday night to save the bullpen, whereas that could have a long-term effect on Knack.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the 3 that you mentioned. I think it's got to be Knack, not just for the fact of effectiveness. And Knack had 1 bad inning, and had a scoreless inning in the other inning with the Padres. But I think with Honeywell, as we saw, like his value is in giving you innings, and they might not be the best innings, they might not be scoreless innings, but sometimes you just need innings, and that's exactly what they needed in Game 5. That's what he gave them. Exactly what they needed in Game 2, because Knack struggled, and that's what he gave them. And yeah, not to say it's one of those where Landon Knack has a potential future with the Dodgers and Honeywell doesn't, but if Honeywell has to throw 3 days in a row, 40 pitches a day, like, I'm sure he's not going to say no. And the Dodgers, realistically, if they needed to do that, they would do that. Obviously, with the guy with that many surgeries on his arm, you probably shouldn't be doing that if you have a little bit of sense. But it's just a matter of that's where they're at in terms of development. And, Kasperius kind of takes the Knack role. Like, he's maybe, might bump into the bulk inning guy in that one bullpen game the Dodgers will need this series. And then, Honeywell can kind of just float around and fill in where need be. But again, I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I definitely think that, unfortunately for Knack, he maybe pitched himself out of a World Series spot.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Have you had a chance to watch the Brent Honeywell, Max Muncy interview with David Vesia?
Yeah, I saw that. I was in the background for a little bit of that too, but
it's so good.
Yeah, we can talk about that, because the main thing, obviously Max stepped in, gave Brent Honeywell his praise for what he did in Game 5 and just what he's done so far, and mentioned something that he said maybe we didn't know, and I don't think anyone knew, that Honeywell was the one throwing live BP in San Diego, and Tamuki and a couple guys that were maybe struggling, and he told them, like, look, I'm going to throw fastballs down the middle, and I want you to crush it out of the park and get that confidence.
In so many words.
Right. Yeah. Get your confidence right, get your swing right. And then, Muncy just continues to talk a little bit awkwardly as Honeywell's kind of standing there when it was his interview initially. But he kind of goes through and says what's, a lot of things that we've said before, like, the 5-day layoff for winning, being a top 2 seed, like, is a privilege and is something that you deserve to have. But, just because of the fact that they've lost the last 2 years, they wanted to find something different. And, basically what they said is they kind of needed to go back to, not as extreme, but the bubble phase of 2020, where they were together for, 30, 40 days, whatever it was. And everyone was right there. And, Max Muncy said, you know what, I don't think, you're not a bad husband, you're not a bad boyfriend, you're not a bad, father, but we need you to lock in with us for these 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. And, basically spend a lot of time with the team and do different things and be all in on one goal, which is winning the World Series. And, again, them hitting is a bigger reason why we're at where we're at, but we can't say for sure that this new approach that they had isn't a reason that they are hitting.
Yeah, absolutely. And specifically to Brent Honeywell, I'm on record on this podcast saying I don't think Brent Honeywell is a good enough pitcher, specifically a good enough strikeout pitcher to pitch important innings in the bullpen or in the postseason, but there's different kinds of important. And what he proved is that there are some important innings he definitely can pitch, especially with bullpen games and everything. And it reminds me of 1988, 3 years before you were born. We had the stuntmen, and the bullpen now, this year's bullpen is calling themselves the Dogs. And I think that's this year's version of the stuntmen. The stuntmen in 1988 was, Mickey Hatcher and Rick Dempsey and Franklin Stubbs. And none of these guys were superstars, but they all made big contributions. And, it makes me think of The Sandlot, that famous line, heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Brent Honeywell is not going to be a hero for the Dodgers in the postseason, but he absolutely might be a legend. He's already what he's done, and the way Max Muncy talked him up, and that was legend talk that Max Muncy was hyping Brent Honeywell as. That he told Honeywell after his performance in Game 5, he said, "You just won Game 6 for us," and it's absolutely true. The fact that the Dodgers, they used Anthony Banda for 1 out on Friday. That was the only guy they used in Game 5 who then pitched in Game 6, because Brent Honeywell went out there and said, "Look, Mets are on a heater today. I'm going to go get my butt kicked for 4 2/3 innings or whatever, but that's okay, because we're not going to win this game. We don't need to win this game. We need to win one of the next 2 games, and the thing I can do best to help that happen is to do it right now." I feel like Brent Honeywell earned his World Series roster spot with showing that willingness. And it seems to me, he strikes me as a guy who's like, if he can blow out his arm helping the Dodgers win a World Series, that is the legends never die. The way this season probably has to end for Brent Honeywell is him limping off the mound with his arm dragging, because he gave everything he had, and then getting toasted in the champagne celebration in the locker room after the Dodgers win the World Series because of some mediocre pitching he did when they really needed it.
Yeah, I mean, he's blown his arm out for less in the past. So, if it leads to a World Series, I'm sure he'll take it. But yeah, it just goes to show, kind of the thing we've mentioned both times. Like, you could go up and down the roster for anyone that's played in these last 2 rounds and say how they contribute, like a direct contribution to how they did it, contributed to the win. Maybe I don't want to single out Landon Ack. He might be the one. But even then, like, he closed out a game. Like, that's a way, the direct contribution to a game. And, he I'm sure that, there's other guys. Enriquez has thrown innings, and sometimes that's all you need. And
even Will Smith and Teoscar Hernandez, who both really struggled offensively this series, and Smith in both series. Smith has 2 huge homers this postseason. Teo had, finally had a good game in Game 6 and contributed big time. He even made some nice plays on defense, which isn't exactly his forte. So, yeah, everybody is contributing. This really is a full team effort for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to talk about Hall of Famers that are playing in this series, or that may play in this series. So, we're going to get into that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, get your season going with the big return on FanDuel. If your team is not that great, like, the team that I root for, I'm rooting for them to lose at this point. But America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, can help you keep that season going. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And right now, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So the easiest thing to do is go put $5 on the Dodgers to win the World Series. It's not a huge return, but you'll get $200 in bonus bets, and you'll have the luxury of getting some money on top of the Dodgers already winning the World Series if that happens. So that's all you got to do. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You place one $5 bet with FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com to check it out. Want to thank you for being an everydayer if you are one. If you're not one, you can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day, which can be made easier by subscribing and getting notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live. And you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. Host Pete Fox is hosting the Locked On Dodgers postcast live after Dodger postseason games, and that's available on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel and on our audio feed. And yeah, Jeff, I guess Buster Olney, I think you said, mentioned or posed a question of how many Hall of Famers are going to be in this series, right?
Yeah, a tweet. It was a Twitter poll. The number of future Hall of Famers in this World Series is ... 4, 5, 6, or 7+. Those are his 4 options. So yeah, I thought we'd look at these rosters and see what the official Locked On Dodgers answer is to that. I haven't voted in the Twitter poll, so I'm going to wait until after we come up with the number. Then I'm going to place my vote. So I guess we should look at the Yankees first, right? Since we're less familiar with them. If we're looking at the pitchers, for me, the only pitcher on their staff with a realistic chance at the Hall of Fame is Garrett Cole. He's 34 years old. He currently has 42 point something WAR. He'd need to have probably 4 more good seasons to really lock in his Hall of Fame candidacy. But he is, that's definitely not out of the question. He's under contract for longer than that with the Yankees, I think. So, I think the only one you could even there's some guys you would never know. Luis Gil is young enough, was good enough at times as a rookie. Maybe he turns into a great pitcher. Everybody else on this roster is some combination of way too old or way too not good. That Luis Gil is the youngest on this roster. Clark Schmidt is 2 years younger, and then it's like 3-4 years younger than Schmidt, or older than Schmidt even. Schmidt is older than Gil. Anyway, so pitcher-wise, you disagree with that? I feel like Garrett Cole's the only one with a chance.
Yeah, Garrett Cole will be interesting. I guess a lot of guys will be interesting because, especially when it comes to pitching and pitching stats, like the stats that were big back in the day and won't be as big now. Garrett Cole has been one of the best pitchers throughout his time, but he doesn't necessarily have what previous pitchers that have gotten in have. But at some point, like, it might even out to where, well, he was the best pitcher in this generation. This generation has started the decline of the starting pitcher, and, you kind of move forward from there. So, yeah, I think he'll have a chance as it stands presently. Like, he might get some votes, last a few years. If he can, obviously, a lot of some of these candidacies could be riding a little bit on this series. I know it's not as valued as some other sports, but a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that. Looking at their position players, Anthony Rizzo, I think, is Hall of Very Good. And, I guess you could maybe make a case that either Jazz Chisholm or Gleyber Torres is going to have a good enough rest of their career to get there. Neither of them, I would say, is on a Hall of Fame trajectory right now. So realistically, we're looking at Aaron Judge, unless he gets hurt, he's absolutely on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and another 2 good years, and he's a lock, basically. Juan Soto, same basic thing, almost a lock already, definitely on a Hall of Fame trajectory. And then I think Stanton has gotten, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, but I don't think he's going to get there now. And so you've got those guys, and then you got Jason Dominguez, who is so young that if he lives up to his potential, absolute Hall of Fame potential, I wouldn't put money on him making the Hall of Fame, but I'd say he's one of the few guys who we just have no idea at this point.
Yeah, I think obviously, Judge and Soto are just based on, you need at least, a couple more, or Judge a little bit more, a couple more years. Soto, he's so young that it's kind of tough, but he's already been that good, and he doesn't have any MVPs. That'd be the one thing on his that he will need to kind of build out in the future. So we'll see where he goes. Stan is interesting because, I don't know, do you consider 500 home runs a lock to make the Hall of Fame? How many 500 homer guys are not, non-steroids, are not in the Hall of Fame? Yeah,
the only ones who aren't are the steroid guys. But I don't know if Stanton's a lock to get to 500 homers. He's at 429 right now, and he's having a good postseason. But he'd need 3 more seasons basically of what he's been lately to get there. And I don't know that Stanton is a lock to do that. He's under contract for 3 more seasons with a team option. So if he can maintain his current, he gets to 500. But I don't know. I
don't think it'll be with the Yankees because he has, or it could be with the Yankees because he has to remain a DH. He can't play out in the field. And at some point, he can't even really run either. But he's at 429. He's hit 27 and 24 and 31 the last 3 years. So it's 2.5 seasons if he remains at that pace. I think if he gets to 500, he has the MVP. He has a good postseason track record. But I do think his is very contingent upon getting 500.
Yeah, that's probably true. So on the Yankee side, if we're saying now I have to sneeze. Oh, all I had to do was mention it, just like last night. So if we say Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge, and Juan Soto are in, and then maybe Dominguez and Stanton add up to one of them gets in, So we're saying 4 Hall of Famers from the Yankees side, probably. Then we go to the Dodgers side. And on the pitching side, realistically, with Clayton Kershaw not being on the roster, it's hard to see. I think Yoshinobu Yamamoto is the only Dodgers pitcher with any sort of real chance at the Hall of Fame at this point.
Yeah, there's none of the starting pitch. Like Walker Buehler would have to have a crazy career resurgence on top of continuing his dominance in October to even have any type of consider. But like Walker already started later because he went to college and then got Tommy John before he even played with the Dodgers, and then now missed time with Tommy John again. So yeah, probably not realistic. I mean, if you count in the dugout, maybe that'll expand it a little bit, maybe for the Dodgers too. But yeah, I think Kershaw is really the only one.
Yeah, Kershaw's a surefire Hall of Famer, but he probably doesn't count since he won't be on the roster. On the position player side, Shohei Ohtani is a lock for the Hall of Fame. Even if he had a career as long as he gets the 10 years of playing time, which he's 3 seasons away, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Mookie, I think, is a lock at this point. Freddie Freeman, I think, is very likely. And then beyond that, I don't see much else, like unless Will Smith has a huge last 9 years of his contract with the Dodgers, because the bar is a little bit lower for catchers. But the reason the bar is a little bit lower is because it's hard to stay productive as a catcher. And we've seen that with Will Smith. So I don't know. I feel like maybe we're just looking at 3 from the Dodgers.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's one of those where this team's different than teams in years past. Like they don't have the for sure star power of after those big 3, obviously. But it's a little bit less of it's a put together team. Like it's some of its parts after it's kind of like the Moneyball team where they don't ever mention the fact that they had Mulder, Zito, and Hudson, and then they had like Miguel Tejada, who was MVP, all that type of stuff. It's kind of like after you get past Ohtani and Betts and Freeman, then you have Teo, who's a great guy, but not Hall of Fame. You have Will Smith, who knows, like the first year of this long-term deal wasn't the best, but he comes through in certain times. So if he can, there's different parts, but I think if the Dodgers win like 5 World Series in the next 7-8 years, then some of these guys might get bumped up the list a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we got 3 from the Dodgers and 3 or 4 from the Yankees. Should I click 6 or 7+? What's our answer, Vince?
What's that? It just says in this series, or
a number of future Hall of Famers in this World Series.
Then yes, probably 6.
6. All right, that's the official vote. We are
like Dave Roberts will get in, but that's in the dugout. Kershaw will get in, that's in the dugout, not in the series.
That's true, Dave Roberts. I didn't think about Roberts, but all right. Well, 44.4% said 7+, 25.1 are with us with 6. So, hey, we did it.
Yeah. All right, Jeff. Anything else? Obviously, there's going to be more talk. I know that they'll for sure have a workout on Thursday. I'm sure they'll have workouts, but maybe not open to the media the next couple of days. But
I think tomorrow we'll talk about the starting rotation and what it'll look like, who we think will go in which game, all that, plus other stuff. So
yeah. All right. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Dodgers postcast with host Pete Fox is available on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us with any questions or comments. You can go beyond the podcast, come on Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. You can find us on social. No, I already said that. You can send us an email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail. Send us a text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, text my advice for the podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.